Are you ready for me, Jordan? I can't hear you. Welcome to the Stochastic MLB Strategy Show. I'm your host, Neil Orfield. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. This show is produced by Jordan Klein. You can find him on Twitter at Jordan Klein. I'm here with DFS legend Terry McBride. You can find him on Twitter at DigitalB21. And this show is sponsored by Bet365. We do have a great promo for Bet365 in just 4 states, which I will talk about a little bit later. Terry, there is no NBA today. Do you think do people need to get into these MLB streets early because these contests are going to fill? What do you think?
I think if you're in the habit of putting in placeholders, like if you're going to drop 150 in there and you normally put them in at 6:45, maybe you want to get them in early today, since there will probably be a big community of people with nothing to do and an itch to get some entries in. So yeah, I think I think that's probably a good idea. Won't be tragic by any means. I'm sure they accounted for that. But as far as I'm concerned, there's been no NBA since last Wednesday. So,
oh, you stopped playing, huh?
I did. Yeah, I do that pretty much every year when baseball starts. I jump out of basketball. I don't like juggling. I'm not as good at it as like EMAC or whatever. Like I need to have my focus a little bit at least. I can do a show and do lineups at the same time, but I just can't do two sports at the same time.
Yep, I hear that. It's especially this part of the season for NBA is just so news intensive too that it's a little bit tough. So I hear you. All right, talking about the slate before we jump in, going game by game. How about you just tell me a little bit about? Do you have any overview of the slate? Anything in particular that stands out to you on this slate? Do we have any weather concerns or anything big you're seeing as an overview, or do you want to just jump in and talk game by game?
So I think it's an interesting slate. It's a slate where a lot of teams are playing their 4th or their 5th games of the season. So we're getting a lot of back end of the rotation, which leads to, some decent opportunities. I've got a lot of spots in my home run model that are looking good. My power index that are looking good for upside. A lot of it is created around some of those clunker starters. We've also got a few kids who are some premium rookies like Hunter Brown from the Astros, very high end rookie. Some other younger pitchers who are making not necessarily their debuts, but their first big starts like a Ryan Nelson from Arizona is going to be making a start here. The kid from the Dodgers is going to be making a start. He's going to be a replacement for like 3 starts to start the season because of some injuries. So there's some stuff like that going on that I think is going to create some opportunity for offense. There should be a few good spots. There are a few good starters still going today, so we've got some opportunities on the mound. But it's going to be a really interesting slate that way. I expect another offensive outburst of a slate, and I think we're going to be seeing that all year long with the stolen bases padding the scoring.
Yeah, I was just looking at just read some stats on it. Sounds like stolen base success rate is up like 8%, and the number of stolen bases just overall is up like 60 stolen bases already on the year. Something crazy like that. It seems like it's a new dynamic this year with stolen bases being a bigger thing. Kind of evens out.
And there's an under discussed aspect of that too. It does, and it's, I'm sure, very, very difficult to quantify. It's beyond my abilities to quantify, but I'm sure somebody out there could, of those same characteristics about the bases that are impacting the ability to more successfully steal a base, right? There's multiple things that go into that with the new pitcher rules as well, and the pitch clock and all that shit. But the actual, just the base size aspect of it does also impact just at regular base running on a base hit, sliding into third, trying to, get an extra base. So I think it does increase offense slightly, in that vein as well. So there's just a lot of things that lead to more offense this year, I think. So I think it's going to be a theme all season long, especially when the weather warms up. These games are going to go nuclear. So it's going to be fun.
That's a really good point that it is. I mean, it is also going to, as you said, hard to quantify, but I would guess the scoring is up, not just because of stolen bases, but as you said, just because of the base running. I agree with you. That's going to be much easier maybe not much easier. Maybe it is pretty incremental, but it makes a difference for sure. There are so many pop plays in MLB that it is going to make a difference.
Yep. And if you just think about how many close plays, a guy, ground ball between the third baseman and the shortstop, a little weak grounder that takes them a second to get to, fast guy at the plate, busting it out of the box, really, really close play at first. Well, now first base is, 3-4 inches closer to the plate than it used to be, that edge. He's going to get that single a lot more times. Right. So you're going to see that a lot more. And that's just another thing. Plus the shift, the inability to shift now is going to increase batting averages. So offense, it's going to be all offense. And we're seeing that in some of these lines, right? This early in the season, we don't typically have 9.5 run lines. We don't typically have 8.5 run lines. We're normally dealing more with 7.5 run lines when the weather's still cold. So we're seeing an increase already. We're going to be dealing with a lot of offense going through this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're gonna jump in game by game. But first, I want to say Paul L says, Neil, I won the 5-cent wiffle ball yesterday. Thanks to your awesome info. It was only $250, but first out of 100,000 plus lineups is crazy. Keep up the good work. Yeah, that's if you can win any tournament with 100,000 plus lineups, that is absolutely insane. And that's credit to you. I mean, I didn't do any content yesterday. So if you won the wiffle ball yesterday, I mean, maybe you followed some of my advice from Saturday. But
I mean, one of us was on the show yesterday, but it wasn't.
yeah. Terry, I'm sure Terry also gave. I watched the show. I know that Terry gave out.
Hopefully. Apologies to anybody who got off of Mr. Brito, by the way. That was the one thing I was pissed off about, that because he's on the Yankees and I was watching that game the entire time. Right. I am confident that's the best game he's going to have all season long.
Yeah, really? Son of a bitch. You think he's not that good?
No, actually, he looked really filthy. I was impressed. He really outperformed a lot of his projection. His Eric Lindquist was messaging me during the game, and his changeup was just falling off the table in 96-mile-an-hour heat with that changeup. It's just there were a lot of aggressive swings as well. So the Giants kind of helped him out on some of those strikeouts, and they were just following the book on him, right? The book is power fastball, decent changeup. And they were just going for it. So I think once the teams catch up, less aggressive team, I'd still stand by what I said about him yesterday, but he got me yesterday for sure. And the kid from Atlanta, complete clunker. So that call didn't work out, but we nailed a couple home runs. So hopefully it helps some people out there.
Yeah. And I, on the Saturday show, of course, I was, my biggest talking point was, I forgot. Matt Olson was like going clearly way over owned. Like that, you're not going to need him. He's going to be 28% owned. And then of course he hits 2 home runs. So that's
he was my home run. He was my home run pick that day.
Oh, that's right. Okay. I mean, he was a good home run pick. He was just not necessarily
he was strongest. Very popular. Yeah.
We better jump into this because we have 12 games. We're gonna have to try and go kind of speedy through them.
There's first nothing else going on.
That is true.
We don't have a hard out, do we?
We don't have a hard out. That is true.
4-hour show.
Yeah, right. Yeah, if it was EMAC here, I would put the over under right around there.
No pitch clock on me, Neil. Let's go.
That's right. All right. Well, we're going Phillies at Yankees first. Taijuan Walker on the mound for the Phillies. Nestor Cortez for the Yankees. I'm just going to open up to you. Talk about the pitchers first. Taijuan Walker, Nestor Cortez. Any interest there?
Yeah, so limited interest in Taijuan Walker. If you want to fill a couple lineups on the back end with him, he's fairly priced for his talent level. 8,100 on FanDuel, 8,700 on DK. It's about right. You can see an upside start from Taijuan from time to time, but he's demonstrably not a very good pitcher. He's like a replacement level type of a guy. 3.89 xFIP over 157 and a third last year. 4.47 the year before in 159 innings. 20.3% strikeout rate last year. 22.3 the year before. He walks a handful of hitters. He doesn't yield a ton of power. 2.31% home run rate last year. 3.98 a little higher the year before. But that's just kind of the happenstance that you see from year to year with a lot of these pitchers. So he's okay. He could find some strikeouts against these Yankees. He could get you to an effective score, but I don't really expect it. We've seen enough out of Taijuan where I just expect more of the Yankees upside will get to him. If they hit multiple home runs, it'll be a big score. If they only hit like 1-2 home runs, it'll be it'll be a lower score. But I expect a 5-6 run output at least for the Yankees here, and not a great game from Taijuan. So wouldn't be going to him. Nestor on the other side, tough, challenging lineup for him. Facing these Phillies, obviously very good. Should have a bunch of right-handed bats in there. But Nestor's proven himself. When Nestor first came to the Yankees, I had him kind of in the bucket that I had Brito in. I'd seen Nestor, right? I knew who this guy was, and he's tricksy on the mound, right? He changes up his arm angles, he changes his delivery, he changes his motion, changes his pitch mix all the time. He's got a bunch of different pitches that are all very effective. And he just gets by. He makes it work. He doesn't have this dazzling Jake DeGrom type repertoire, but he makes it work. 0.92 whip last year, kept guys off base, doesn't give up too many opportunities. A 3.64 xFIP is more indicative of who he really is than the 2.44 ERA we saw from him. But 3.64 xFIP is perfectly serviceable. I'll take that. 26.5% strikeouts. There's strikeout upside for him here in this lineup. There are a few guys who are good at avoiding strikeouts, but I think he's got the upside. I think he's got the talent. 10.5 is a difficult price on FanDuel just compared to some of these other guys, but I'll definitely have shares. And what I'm hoping is that the pricing keeps the ownership down on him, the pricing and the matchup. So maybe we get him as like a pay up to be contrarian type option.
Okay. How about the bets? On the other side of it, we have what are the run totals here? We've got the Braves with a 4 points. Sorry, that's wrong. I'm all out of order here. All right. We have the Phillies have a 3.6 implied run total. The Yankees at 4.6. I'll open it up to you. Talk about both of them. How much interest do you have in either of these stacks? Or what?
I think a fair amount of interest in Yankee stacks. They rank looks like 7th for the full lineup in my power index. They jump 7th Seventh for the full lineup and sixth for the top six in my little power index that I do, which is just basically averaging the probabilities in my home run model for power. So we're looking for home runs. That also can be used to take a look at like where are we going to find doubles and RBIs and stuff like that, right? It informs those kind of numbers, but it's not necessarily like a stacking guide. But I think the Yankees do look really good here. I talked about the warts that are on Taijuan Walker. We've all seen him give up a ton of runs and some decent amount of power. You've got Aaron Judge, you've got Giancarlo Stanton, obvious names. I expect Jose Trevino to be behind the plate again, but if you get Kyle Higashioka for some reason, he hit a home run yesterday. I talked about him in my article, and just excellent power bat from Kyle Higashioka. He only hit 10 home runs last year, but he had a fantastic contact profile. So whenever he's in the lineup, I like going there, but I don't expect him. The infielders, Glaber, Josh Donaldson, Anthony Rizzo, you can play any one of those guys in a stack with Yankees. I would rank them probably, depending on where Glaber's hitting, I expect him back in the 6-7 spot. He led off yesterday. But if you get Glaber in the back of the lineup, I would put him behind Rizzo, and I would go Rizzo, Glaber, Donaldson in ranking them. If Glaber's sitting at the top of the batting order, I would put him above Rizzo and go Glaber, Rizzo, Donaldson. But basically, top to bottom, I wouldn't leave DJ LeMahieu out. He's cheap. He's got multi-position, 3-position eligibility on FanDuel for only $2,700. For a hitter like DJ LeMahieu, he's kind of struggled. He's had I forget whether it's a back or a rib or whatever, some ailing thing. Foot was also a thing for him. Regardless, he's had some weird injuries over the last few years that have been kind of hampering his production. He's a terrific hitter when he's going right and hitting in front of these other bats. That's a phenomenal correlation piece when you get him that cheap with 3-position eligibility, 2-position eligibility on DK. So do like Yankee stacks here. You want to chime in, or should I just dive into the Phils?
Yeah, dive right in.
Okay. All right. So Phillies, they're going to be dealing with a lineup with no Rhys Hoskins, with no Bryce Harper for Harper, at least for the first part of the year. Seems like he's on the fast track to get back. So maybe like May, Hoskins out for the year, but it's still a really, really good lineup. Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto, Nick Castellanos, Alec Boehm, even Bryson Stott down toward the bottom of the lineup. I like a lot of these hitters. They're fairly cheap. I'm curious to see where their ownership comes in. I don't imagine they're going to be that popular. So I think you can get to shares of them. Going up against Nestor in Yankee Stadium, there's some upside for home runs, for some power. It's not really coming through in a big way in my model. If you wanted to go to Kyle Schwarber, even with a lefty in Yankee Stadium, there's a decent chance for Kyle Schwarber to hit a home run. He might get one off the bullpen later in the game. So I think you can one off Kyle Schwarber. I think you build mini stacks, particularly with the top of the lineup there. I wouldn't sleep on Bryson Stott for cheap from late in the lineup as like a little wraparound play, or if you need like a cheap one-off at second base. Bryson Stott's an interesting hitter, hit 10 home runs, stole 12 bases last year. So cheap little guy.
All right. Sean V saying Phillies didn't even get into their hotel room till 4 a.m. last night. That's a tired team today. Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of, sometimes we talk about how I said on my show on Saturday, I don't think that there's a ton of nuance in MLB. If you want to factor that in, go right ahead and factor it in. I think that they travel enough and that they're on weird enough sleep schedules that I don't think that's a huge factor for me, something that I plan on factoring in. But is that something you care about, Terry? Is that if the Phillies didn't get into their hotel rooms until 4 a.m., is that something you want to factor into your decisions to play Phillies or not?
It's not really a thing that I care about. They were coming from Texas. That's why I was just pulling up. I forgot where had been playing. They were in Texas. So we're talking about what, a 4-hour flight, a 5-hour flight, guys that are used to doing it. I don't really care that much about it. It falls into that bucket of maybe it's a factor, but how the hell do we quantify it? Right.
Yeah.
Am I going to take a plate appearance away from Trey Turner to factor in that difference in how he might hit in the 5 plate appearances he'll still get? Like, there's no way that I can quantify how that impacts a guy. Maybe Trey Turner, when he's, bleary eyed and squinting up at the plate, maybe that makes him see the ball better. Who knows? Right. I have no idea. So yes, could it factor in? Sure. But so could a lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bad taxi ride to the stadium could also factor it. You just can't.
Sure.
You can't account for everything.
You don't really know what's going on in people's lives. Yeah, there's always, as you say, it's just impossible to quantify this kind of thing. All right, let's move on to the Rays at Nationals. I'm not even going to throw it back. I'm not going to say, Terry, do you have any more thoughts on this game? Because I know you will if I do. And we got 12 games we got to get through. So I'm just going to move right on to the Rays at Nationals game. We've got Drew Rasmussen on the mound for the Rays, Trevor Williams for the Nats. Let's start with those pitchers. Do you have any interest in Drew Rasmussen or Trevor Williams?
Yeah, I think Rasmussen's very interesting here. 8,100 on DK. I actually forgot to load up the ownership, so I'll do that as I'm talking here. But he comes through my model as my highest projected pitcher overall. I'm interested at 10-2 on FanDuel. Very interested at 8,100. That's a misprice in my opinion on the DK slate for this pitcher in this matchup. Last year, 21.4% strikeout rate, a 3.56 xFIP. What I really like about him, a 12.1% swinging strike rate. He didn't throw enough called strikes. If we see more called strikes from him this year, that strikeout rate's probably gonna increase a little bit. So I liked Rasmussen here, and especially just this matchup in particular. It's just a great matchup going up against the Nats. I know they got to the kid a little bit yesterday from Atlanta, but I am not worried about a team with Luis Garcia, Joey Menzies, Dom Smith, Keibert Ruiz. Like, this is a nothing lineup. Pitcher with Rasmussen's talent and experience should be able to get through this pretty well. Year before last, also, he had a 23.8% strikeout rate. So we've already seen him with a little bit better of a strikeout rate, 29% CSW that year compared to 25.9. So we just make up the difference with those called strikes. We'll see more strikeouts. Could be a great spot for him to get started. Trevor Williams on the other side, even with the discount, I don't really see it. 6,400 on FanDuel, 76 on DK. If you wanted to take out a couple shares of Trevor Williams on it as a super discount on the DK slate, fine. But it's not like you're getting him at that 5,000 price tier, that 6,000 price tier. He's still 7,600 at 22.6% strikeout rate, a 3.93 xFIP, 3.23% home run rate last year. Similar numbers over 91 innings the year before. It was 89 and 2/3 last year. He's fine. He's replacement level. I just wouldn't pitch a pitcher like him for fantasy purposes against a lineup like these Rays. Like, even if they don't get to him for a ton of power, like a ton of DFS scoring, I just think they get to him for baseball scoring and chase him after, a handful of innings, and he doesn't give you any kind of upside here. So I don't really love the Williams side of it, but definitely Rasmussen interest.
Yeah, we've got Rasmussen projected for just 11.4% ownership. Do you think you are interested in getting on top of that number?
Right now, let me load up the ownership as we're talking about it, and I'll have that in front of me. But I would think so. It'll depend on, I haven't run any lineups or anything like that, so it'll depend on how hitter pricing works with pitcher pricing, how the stacks and all of that fall.
Sure.
But yeah, in a game theory vacuum, I think I would want to get to more of that because, like I said, he's my top projected pitcher. So, and I love the matchup. So yeah, seems like.
And only 8,100. Yeah, it seems relatively low owned when factoring in all. He's your top projected pitcher on the entire slate. Is that what you said?
He is.
That's wow at 8,100. Very interesting. Okay. Well, then let's move on to the bat side of this game. Sounds like you have a lot of interest in Drew Rasmussen. You'll look that up and we'll get back to it. But moving on to the bats, the Rays we have here with a 4.6 implied team total, Nationals 3.6. I imagine you have more interest in the Rays than the Nationals. Is that accurate?
Yes, some is higher than none in most cases. So yes, I have some interest in the Rays side and no interest really in the National side. If you end up with a couple shares of Nats small stacks like 3-man or something like that, fine, take them. It's baseball. Anything can happen. We saw it yesterday. They put up some runs. If you're doing that, the names that I mentioned before, kind of laughing at them, are the names that you basically want. It's Joey Menzies, however you pronounce that, Dom Smith, Keibert Ruiz, Eimer Candelario, maybe some Lane Thomas and some CJ Abrams. They're both semi-interesting bats they're on the Nationals, and how good can they possibly be kind of a sense. But maybe there's a little upside there. But I don't expect much. I won't be going there. Rays side of things, Yandy Diaz, Brandon Lau, Randy Arozarena, Wander Franco off the top. Stack those 4 hitters together, stack them with other guys from their team. Depending on what version of this lineup we get, they mix and match pieces. They platoon a lot. So we'll see who's there, but those are going to be your key hitters. They're all single digits ownership outside of Brandon Lau, who's pulling 15.8% on DK, 22.1% because he's just too cheap. Brandon Lau was hurt most of last year. He made 266 plate appearances, hit 8 home runs. Year before last, he made 615 plate appearances at second base, hit 39 home runs. He is one of the best power hitting second basemen in all of baseball, if not the best. So I would not skip him here against Trevor Williams. Even with the ownership, I'll take him. Maybe not as a one-off, but in stacks, I definitely want to have a piece of him in there. Everybody else is low owned enough that you don't really care about his big ownership in there. So I think you can stack the Rays in a lot of different ways, and I'll probably be doing that in this matchup.
Ryan Renenbaum asked, would you suggest him for single entry? I assume he's talking about Rasmussen. Would you play Rasmussen in a single entry contest?
Depending on what bats that would let me get to. On DK, it seems more likely because he's only 8,100 over there. So you could go, on the DK slate, I could take Rasmussen as my SP1 at 8,100, pair him with Hunter Brown, who I'm sure is crushingly popular at 7,400 as my SP2. And now I'm off and running, having spent like nothing at starting pitcher and getting two of the top starting pitchers off the board. So I kind of really like that approach on DK. On FanDuel, where he's 10-2, it really would depend on what I could stack with him in terms of bats. We're spending a lot more there. So it depends. But DK, I'd be pretty enthusiastic about that cheap two-starter pairing between Rasmussen and Hunter Brown.
Okay. Chris L was asking, what does DTD mean? I assume that's day to day. I don't know what the context is of that, where you see that, but yeah, it's day to day. All right. So interest in the Rays, interest in Drew Rasmussen, not really that interested in the Washington side, not interested in Trevor Williams at all. Probably not playing the batters at stacks very much. Let's move on and talk about Pirates at Red Sox. Johan Oviedo going up against Cutter Crawford in the Pirates versus Red Sox game. Starting with the pitchers, how much interest do you have in Oviedo or Crawford here?
Yeah, not really that much. Oviedo, another like replacement level, maybe a little bit worse depending on how he's walking guys, maybe a little bit better depending on how his swinging strikes are coming through. But he's going to be in that 20-ish to 22% strikeout range. 4.14 xFIP over 56 innings last year. I expect him to be around that level. No real interest. This Red Sox lineup isn't good in terms of how the Red Sox have been over the last decade and change, but they're still serviceable. They're still talented enough to get to a pitcher like this. I don't know that it's going to lead me into Red Sox stacks, but it keeps me away from Oviedo, and it looks like the field's doing that as well. 0.5% owned on both sides, so no real interest there. Cutter Crawford is getting a little bit of attention at 5,800 on DK. For that kind of a price play, he's fine. It falls into like that burrito bucket from yesterday, right? I don't expect much from him here, but you also don't need much at 5,800, right? If he goes out and gives you a couple innings, strikes out a few guys, gives up a run or two, you might get through with that in tournaments. So he's okay. 23.1% strikeout rate over 77 and a third last year, a 4.33 xFIP. He most likely needs more seasoning. They wanted him to be bouncing between AAA and maybe a bullpen role this year. We had Tanner Houck go for this team yesterday. He was slated to be in the bullpen this year, and then they lost Brian Bayo and one of those other starters whose name escapes me at the moment. So these kids are filling in to start the season for a handful of starts. Crawford is very much in that bucket. So I'm not going to go to him. 7,000 on FanDuel takes him kind of out of play. 5,800, like I said, few shares on DK if you want to. I don't really have issue with it.
Okay. And then the bats, we've got Pirates have a 4.1 implied team total. Red Sox at 5.1, maybe the highest on the board. One of the highest on the board for sure for the Red Sox. And it's in Boston at Fenway. Nice hitters park. How much interest do you have in stacking or playing one-offs from the Pirates or Red Sox?
So I got to look into some of the numbers here, which I didn't have a chance to do before the show. The Sox aren't pulling the biggest home run marks in my model, which isn't like the do-all end all of deciding whether or not I want to play these guys, because they are relatively cheap, but they're drawing a ton of ownership. And looking at some of his marks from the last 2 years, Oviedo only a 6.2% barrel rate allowed last year on a 10.6 degree average launch angle, 37.7% hard hit, only 87.3 mile an hour average exit velo. So that all added up to a 2.07% home run rate. Year before, 7.7 barrel rate, 7.1 degree average launch angle, a 35.1% hard hit rate, 87.7 mile an hour average exit velo, 2.78% home run rate. The reason I'm throwing numbers at this is because that speaks to a pitcher who, despite being like a league averages type of guy, not being a big time strikeout guy, is good at inducing weak contact, is good at avoiding premium contact and avoiding home runs. So it might impact that. The Sox might still be able to drive the ball, get on base, sequentially hit, and rack up runs against this kid, kind of like what we saw with the Rays on Saturday, where they only hit one home run the entire game. It wasn't off the starter, but they just kept on hitting and kept on racking up runs by sequencing. I would expect more that type of game from the Sox here. Wouldn't take them out of play outside of the fact that the guys I really want to get to are kind of owned. So maybe if I'm playing Red Sox, I'm looking more toward like a Yoshida, Duvall, Casas kind of a three-man stack in the middle there, where there's not that much popularity. There's pretty cheap pricing and still some opportunity for upside. So that's kind of how I'm looking at the Sox here, but I am somewhat interested. The Pirates are also interesting. They're cheap. They're not that popular outside of O'Neal Cruz, who's going to be popular on basically every slate, regardless of price all season long. But the rest of these guys, Brian Reynolds, not too popular. Carlos Santana, who I really like, never gets attention. He's very, very cheap. He still has a decent power bat from both sides of the plate. So I like getting there. Kanan Smith and Jigba, Brian Hayes, Jack Sawinski, Ji-Hwan Bae, all interesting names down this Pirates lineup. If they're not getting that much attention going into the slate as we get more toward lock, I think their value-based pricing is probably going to go up a little bit in this matchup. In this ballpark is going to drive the ownership up a little bit. That's a spot I'll keep an eye on, though. I'm somewhat interested in Pirates here.
Nate Diaz, on the early 2-game slate, what are you willing to allow batter versus pitcher? So I haven't even looked at the early slate, to be honest. So it's tough for me to ask without looking at like the pitchers and looking at the full context of the slate. But it's typically I'll allow like 3 against my pitcher on a 2-game slate, just because sometimes the damage can be done later in the game after the pitcher leaves the game, which I'm not going to take that kind of risk on a full slate, because you really need pitchers who are going to go 7+ innings, and then that doesn't leave much time for at least 6+ innings, where it doesn't leave much time for the bats on the other side to put up scores. But on a 2-game slate, you don't necessarily need your pitchers to even do that great to be the optimal pitcher. So I am willing to allow a few batters against my pitcher. Do you have a different response there, Terry, to how many batters are you willing to allow against your pitcher on this 2-game slate today?
Yeah, when we get to a 3-game slate, I cut it to at most 1, and I very rarely even do that. I'm pretty clean and don't even play them in a 3-gamer. In a 2-game format, open it up. I got no issues with it. I think there's so much variance in there. You're also dealing with a situation like if there was a Jake DeGrom on that slate, you would have an issue there because you wouldn't want to run 3 batters against Jake DeGrom in a bunch of lineups, right? You don't have that today. You've got Carlos Carrasco, you've got 4 good pitchers, but not great, right? Carlos Carrasco, Freddie Peralta, Anthony DeScalfani, and Michael Kopech. So I think you can go against any of those pitchers. You can take three hitters against any of those pitchers without a real problem. It's not ideal, but for a 2-game slate, yeah, that's kind of the way you have to play it.
Yep, that makes sense to me. Yeah, I think I'm more willing than you are to play on a 3-game slate. I would probably still allow like a couple batters against my pitcher, but yeah,
and that's just kind of a decision I made at some point and haven't looked at in quite a while. So you could certainly be right about that.
Well, it's also I've done zero like research into what the correct is, or like what like most pros do, which is something that I'm doing the solo show pretty frequently this year. I'll be looking into what pros have done on these slates, so maybe that's something I'll look at tomorrow.
I think that's a really great way to handle it. And I was talking about that yesterday on the show with EMAC. I watched that whole show. I really enjoyed it. I thought that was a great way to do that show and really dig into the process. And like I said to the crowd yesterday, to a degree, at least, like you guys aren't here for baseball analysis. You're here for DFS analysis, right? So that's actually probably the better way to consume that show, is by watching you go through your process, talk about how the pieces fit together DFS wise, and kind of leave the odds and ends of the baseball that I talk about a lot kind of out of it. So I know people like to get the mix on these shows, but I found that really, really valuable the other day. So keep that up. I really strongly endorse people watching that show.
I appreciate that. And that's it's different like than the way when you and I do it, like we get deep into the nitty gritty. I mean, I should say you get deep into the nitty gritty of baseball, but for me to be doing a show, especially, I think that's the better format if I'm going to be the one doing the analysis, because that's the way I approach MLB DFS. So for me to try to do like talk about ISO and WRC plus, the things that don't really factor in for me, then it's not as relevant. But I think
and like I'm saying, like if you bump into somebody and hey, what are you doing for work these days? You wouldn't say I'm a professional baseball analyst. You might say I'm a professional DFS analyst. Right. So that's what you're paid to do. That's what people should be tuning in to hear. Right. So I really think that's a good way to do that show, and people should be watching it and checking it out starting tomorrow. I'll definitely be there.
And going forward, I'm probably not going to start with the most boring part of my process. I think that was my biggest takeaway from the show is I started with the most boring aspect, drove half the audience away, I'm sure. But going forward, I think we're going to start with some analysis of what pros do, which at least to me is a fun thing to look at. So
absolutely.
Anyway, enough about the show that I'll be doing tomorrow. Let's get back to this show, because I love talking baseball with you, hearing your different opinions and stuff, like things like Drew Rasmussen. That is something that, you can tell me about Drew Rasmussen, pique my interest there, where maybe I have no idea how much I would have had elsewhere. But now I'm thinking I want to play some Drew Rasmussen. Anyway, back to this.
Don't come looking for me if that doesn't work out.
Yeah. Did you have anything else to say about the Pirates at Red Sox game?
Let me just go jump back there. We went through the lineup there. No, I think we're good. If anybody has like specific questions about different hitters and that, we didn't do like a deep dive on each hitter, but we're around all day. You can find us.
Yep. All right, well then let's move on to the next game. But first, I do want to say we have a new promo going for our MLB tools, the MLB 9 for $9 deal. So for $9, excuse me, you can get 9 days of MLB DFS projections, top stacks. Well, all of our DFS, all of our MLB DFS stuff is going to be available to you for $9 if you use the promo code PLAYBALL or click the link in the description of this video. Again, it's just $9 for your first 9 days. You'll get MLB DFS projections, ownership, top stacks tool, top pitchers tool, top data tool, lineup generator, internal Discord, and more. Wow. Yeah. So we have basically everything that you want for MLB DFS. All of our offerings obviously does not include Fantasy Cruncher because Fantasy Cruncher is an add-on, but everything else is just $9 for your first 9 days. Use promo code PLAYBALL or hit the link in the description of this video. And that's all the tools that I'm going to be using on my solo shows. I'm going to be showing you those tools, but generally my shows are going to be in the morning, and then the tools are going to update throughout the day. So the information is going to change throughout the day. So if you want access to the information closer to lock, use that promo code PLAYBALL to take advantage. All right, Terry, let's move on. Blue Jays at Royals. Next on the docket, Jose Barrios on the mound for the Jays. Michael Grove for the I have the Dodgers in here. Is it the Royals or the Dodgers here? Let me.
It's the Royals. It's Brady Singer.
Okay. Yep. I just wrote that wrong. So Michael Brady Singer on the mound for the Royals. We'll start there. Jose Barrios, Brady Singer. How much interest?
Yeah, those damn Royals masquerading as the Dodgers with their similarly colored uniforms. You know, it's
That's
such
right.
a pain in the ass. They wish. Yeah, I actually have interest in Brady Singer. It looks like I'm seeing this a little differently than the slate. He's only 2% owned on DK, 0.7% owned on the FanDuel slate, 9,200 on FanDuel, 8,900 over on DK, going up against an excellent Toronto lineup. Like, I don't like the matchup here at all, but I do like the pitcher. 24.2% strikeout rate over 153 and a third last year, a 3.30 xFIP, a 3.23 ERA. So he was who he was, like right on the surface, a 1.14 whip. What I really like is he made notable improvements year over year for a young pitcher. He made 27 starts in 2021, 128 in the third innings, 22.4% strikeout rate. So the strikeout rate went up by 2 percentage points. He cut his walks from 9% to 5.6%. The xFIP went from 411 to 330. The ERA went from 491 to 323. If you care about ERA, swinging strikes took a tiny dip, but the CSW was exactly the same. Kept his home run rate 2.39 in 21 versus 2.90, essentially the same. He allows a little bit of premium contact, 40.9% hard hit rate, 8.2% barrel rate. So there is a little power potential, but I like Singer here. And especially if nobody's going to him at price, he's a fair price for his talent. I think there's some strikeouts for him to be had here. There's a couple of guys that he's really got to avoid, obviously, with that power packed star laden lineup that the Blue Jays have. But I think he could give us a few clean innings, find some strikeouts, and give us a serviceable DFS score. So I'm interested in Singer, and I'm probably more interested in Singer than I am in Jose Barrios. 9,100, 9,000 site to site, single digit, low single digit ownership for him. If you like Jose Barrios, you can go there, and this is probably a spot to do it today. I'm seeing it the other way around, though. I'm getting decent power marks on the Kansas City Royals. I've got 4 hitters in that lineup that are over the magic number of 10 in my home run model. They're actually the full lineup, actually both categories, the full lineup and the top 6. They're my top ranked team in my home run model today in my power index. So getting a lot of power indicators for the Royals here. Looking at Barrios, 19.8% strikeout rate last year, big dip from the 26.1% that he put up the year before. There were some notable things that I completely forgot what they were that we were looking at with him last year that were indicators that it was a kind of a real dip. And there was a little bit of back and forth, but it kind of carried through his entire 172 inning season. 1.42 whip up from 1.06 the year before, 3.85% home run rate up from a 2.82. That's on the back of a jump to a 43.4% hard hit rate. That's up 5 percentage points from the year before. So something was going on with Barrios last year. Maybe he solved it. Maybe he hasn't. I'm going to take the shot on some Royals bats here and assume that he hasn't solved it. I'll let the field have Barrios if they want him. Doesn't look like they're really going there either, though.
All right, what do we have the Royals stacks at? So we've got, I'm going to find that because that's, you have interest, the field. Okay, we're projecting for 4.9% Royals stack. So not going completely unowned there. But
most of that popularity, looking at the individual numbers, looks like it's on Bobby Witt and MJ Melendez, who are both still on FanDuel. Witt's at 12.4%. Everywhere else, they're still in single digits, and everybody in that lineup is single digits to half a percentage point. So I have no issues going to Royals as far as ownership goes. If you want to get there and they're cheap and they're easy to get to, I definitely think it's a good stack to play today.
Okay. And I didn't lead you in. If you have more you want to say about the stack, I know you. You segued there. We're talking about the pitchers to the stack. Did you want to?
I wanted to give it back so you can get your transition in.
Yeah. Well, I had a couple comments that I wanted to mention. Clintonwood 83 says Terry is awesome. Yeah, ain't that the truth?
Thank you.
I agree with that. But then there was another one that Deacon to the Legend says, "Good morning, Terry. Where can I find the article? Is it posted back on the website?" Did you write an article today, Terry?
I do not have content on Stokastic. If you have my Twitter handle, you can find some compelling links though.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. Moving back to the bats in this game. So you segued there a little bit, but did you have anything else you want to add about your interest in Blue Jays? And it sounds like you're very interested in the Royals relative to where we have the field, but go into that a little bit more.
Yeah. So like I said, Barrios is, as of last year, he was allowing a ton of contact, decent amount of power. And the Royals have transitioned from that team that they were like a year and a half, 2 years ago, where it was a lot of hit tool specialists, decent amount of speed, no power to speak of, but a lack of strikeouts too. Now there's a big time strikeout team with a good amount of power on it. They're swinging for the fences. And I'm getting, like I said, good home run marks on all of Witt, Melendez, Sal Perez, Franmil Reyes is in this lineup in the projected lineup in the 5 spot. Vinny Pasquantino is just under that magic number of 10. He's at 9.93. Let's call it a 10. Let's say the top 5 hitters in that lineup are all at or over the magic number. Kind of like that. They're also cheap, so it's easy to combine all those guys. You can also drop below that pool. 6-hitter Michael Massey, decent left-handed bat. Last year, 13% barrel rate. Only hit 4 home runs and 194 plate appearances off of that. But if he's continuing that kind of a contact profile, you really like to see that. So you can get to some Michael Massey for cheap at second base and no ownership whatsoever. He's 2,500 on DK, 3.3% owned, 2,200 on FanDuel at second base, 2.4% owned. We saw Edward Olivares. I mentioned him in my article yesterday, hitting at the bottom of this lineup. He hit a home run. He's 3,600, 0.5% owned on DK, 2,300, 0.5% owned on FanDuel. A little bit of power, a little bit of speed, makes for a decent wraparound play back to those power hitters at the top. I like this Royals lineup. That said, take everything with a grain of salt. If we get the old version of Jose Barrios here, you could see him plow through this lineup and pile up some strikeouts. So if you're stacking a ton of Royals, maybe grab a couple head shares of Jose Barrios. I don't want to completely write him off because there is that possibility. We have seen talent from him before. I just think that it's somewhat evaporated last year, and we'll see. But all indicators for me are on the Royals side of that one.
Okay. Jerry, I've never seen you pick up the baseball and start looking like you're going to throw a baseball before. I like it though. You should do that more often. Maybe
it was just, I did it yesterday. It was just sitting on my desk. I forget when I put it on, it was back there. And I moved it to the desk at some point and I just, started picking it up. So it'll probably be here all season now.
That's funny. Rant says, is there any funky weather today? It's snowy here. First of all, did you mention, do you know if there's any big weather concerns here? It's a little bit early in the day to know for sure, but also where the hell are you, Rants, where it's snowy today? I'm in Minnesota. If finally the weather is starting to look, we got 10 inches of snow a couple nights ago, so not too far off, but it's finally warming up here.
Rants from Siberia says it's snowy here today and has questions about baseball. Looks like the only game with any kind of indicator, and I'm just looking at a different fantasy site with that has weather indicators on it. It looks like it's only on that early slate in Chicago, and it looks like it's going to be fine. It looks like just some chance of drizzle. So I would say we're clean. But this main slate locks in another 8 hours. So give it some time. Plenty of time to check out weather.com or whatever.
That's right. All right. Let's move on to the Braves at Cardinals. Charlie Morton on the mound for the Braves.
Jake Woodford. Let's just before we do that real quick, let's just mention I do like Brady Singer, but the Blue Jays are fairly low owned. They're expensive. They're difficult to get to. I don't really need to go hitter by hitter. Everybody knows that we play the 3 hitters at the very top of this lineup. You can play Varsho, you can play Kirk, depending on. Actually, it looks like Varsho doesn't have any catcher eligibility anymore, so Kirk is your catcher of choice there. Whit Merrifield, somewhat interesting, second base and outfield eligibility for price and ownership. Decent hit tool, decent speed, a little bit of power. So I don't dislike Whit Merrifield down the bottom of the lineup. And the last guy I wanted to mention is Matt Chapman, just because I will always mention Matt Chapman because everybody's written him off. He hit 27 home runs last season. He had a 12.9% barrel rate, a 50.7% hard hit rate. He is 3,700 at third base, 1.8% owned on DK, 2,900 on FanDuel, 0.6% owned. Get some Matt Chapman into your Blue Jays stacks if you're stacking Blue Jays. He's a serviceable one-off as well.
You didn't even mention it. It's a Whit Merrifield revenge game. How many extra points are you giving him today? Because it's a revenge game.
Just load it up. Hit the 3 thumbs up, whatever your optimizer of choice is. Lock him in. That's a guarantee in baseball, right?
Got to play Whit Merrifield. Yeah, Whit Merrifield. He's going to be playing angry today. All right. Okay, now are we ready to? Sorry, the one time now I stopped asking if we can move on, and then we missed a pitcher completely, or a stack completely.
I think we covered this one top to bottom.
All right, Braves Cardinals, Charlie Morton, Jake Woodford. We'll start with Charlie Morton and Jake Woodford. Do you have any interest in the pitchers here?
Charlie Morton, some interest. Again, another guy, don't really like the matchup, but like the pitcher, 28.2% strikeout rate from Morton. He was one of a handful of pitchers over 200 strikeouts last season, 172 innings. It's a pretty good strikeout rate. Veteran guy. I was ready to write Charlie Morton off like 2 years ago, and he just kind of found it and has kept it going here. So I'm going to stay on that boat until he really, kicks us all off. Like I said, I don't like the matchup here. So I think the field's ownership is probably about right. 9,600 on DK. He's going 8.3%. Let's call it 10-ish% owned. 9,400 on FanDuel. 4.9% might actually be a little bit low. I would probably get up to 10, 12%, something like that on Charlie here, and hope for the best against a very, very good Cardinals lineup. This is probably a three corners game for me. I would probably stack Braves, stack some cards, some stacks of cards, not get carried away with it, but I'd probably be over the field on Cardinal stacks. Definitely want to stack some Braves here. Looks like they're drawing popularity as usual, going up against Jake Woodford. No interest really to speak of in Woodford. 6,200 from site to site. Not drawing any ownership, but for reasons. 48 and a third innings last year, only one start. So he's a converted bullpen guy, probably headed back to the bullpen, just making a couple spot starts here. 12.8% strikeout rate out of the pen mostly last year. That's not good. That's not what you want to see, even particularly when it's a bullpen arm, right? You normally get a much higher strikeout rate. So not a guy I'm interested in Woodford here at all, really. I think you can throw Braves bats at him.
Okay, well then let's talk about those bats. How much interest do you have in stacking Braves or Cardinals or playing one-offs from this game?
Yeah. So like I said, the Braves top to bottom in this lineup, pretty much any given day, unless they're facing a super duper star of a pitcher, you can at least get some shares of Braves in your life. And you can play that pricing and ownership game. They do have decent upside here. I'm seeing mid-range home run marks from guys that, normally will produce very nice home run marks like a Matt Olson, a Ronald Acuna, and Austin Riley. So obviously, you can get any one of those guys into your lineups. They're all expensive. They're drawing less ownership on FanDuel, single-digit ownership for Olson and Riley. Actually, no, single-digit for those guys on DK as well. Yeah, I was completely wrong about that. The one that stood out is Michael Harris is actually a lot more owned on DK because he's 3,800 over there. He's 3,800 on FanDuel as well, but the relative pricing, that puts him at 4.9% owned. That's the one that stood out, and I assumed it was true across the board. They're actually a little bit less owned on DK, but outside of Harris and Acuna, everybody is in single digits, so they're reasonably playable here. I can definitely get to some Brave stacks, and like I said, they go pretty much top to bottom. You can combine them any way you want to. Okay,
and the Cardinals. So Burt Bondy says Cards bats are hot. Gorman and Donovan hitting makes them so dangerous. Is that something you're factoring in here? I think it's hard to predict streaks, I guess, in things.
Yeah,
like
hot
baseball,
isn't a thing.
But yeah, hot, I don't think it's something you can factor.
It's just not a thing.
But do you have
just
any
mathematically? It's just mathematical happenstance. You're looking at a 10 plate appearance sample that a guy could go 0 for 10 a couple days, 6 for 10 another couple days. It doesn't mean anything. There's no such thing as hot. That said, the Cardinals are an excellent lineup. Like, this is going to be a really good lineup all year long, and a lineup that we want to play all year long. So you're not wrong in saying that they've been productive so far, but they're meeting expectation. Like, this isn't, any kind of weird outcome or anything like that. This is a very, very good lineup. Top to bottom, Brendan Donovan, the person mentioned there, 281, 394, 379 last year. More a correlation play. Great WRC plus, 29% better than average creating runs last season. Correlates really, really nicely with the Lars Nootbaars, the Paul Goldschmidts, the Nolan Arenados, the Tyler O'Neills, the Nolan Gormans of the world, the power hitters in this lineup, as does Tommy Edman, who typically hits ninth. One of my favorite wraparound plays in the league. 13 home runs, 32 stolen bases out of Tommy last year. His on-base percentage leaves something to be desired, but he's productive enough with the bat that he kind of makes up for it. So he can hit you a home run. He can definitely steal you a few bags, and then he wraps around and correlates back to the top with those power hitters. So yeah, I'm enthusiastic always about getting to cards. I don't love the matchup against Charlie Morton. It's kind of the same thing that I was saying about Morton. It goes back the other way too. He's a very, very good pitcher. They're a good team at limiting strikeouts, though, so they can find some contact against them. They can find some power against them. We called out Nolan Gorman on the show yesterday. He went for a double dong for us, so I'm going to throw him right back into the mix here, like the person in the audience just did. He's only 3,200 on DK, 2,500 on FanDuel. After yesterday's performance, we'll probably see a slight uptick in ownership, but we still got him low single digits. Get some Nolan Gorman in your life. Tremendous power bat. So definitely don't want to skip him in stacks. But yeah, this lineup and Jordan Walker, their this year rookie, is another kid who's going to be a standout as a rookie all year long. So literally top to bottom, you can play this lineup 1 through 9.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bert says he's not factoring. He clarified he's not factored in that they're hot, but the lineup is underrated, which I think that might be true. The Cardinals lineup,
yeah, they don't get enough attention. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
They were all year last year, and I think they will be again this year. Although, if Gorman's hitting, if Jordan Walker, who was a very hot redraft league going into the season guy as a prospect, if he gets hot, like they'll start getting some attention because this lineup is just loaded this year. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, definitely an early season sleeper for sure.
Yep. Absolutely. Still regretting that I didn't pull the trigger on Nolan Gorman when I could in my keeper league, my NL only keeper league. Could have drafted Nolan Gorman, but I didn't think anybody would. So I was like, I'll save him for the next round. And then somebody else got him. Yep. So that was a big mistake by me. RIP. Anyway, let's move on. Or anything else you want to say about this Braves at Cardinals game?
Well, getting to the Braves side. We talked about the Braves side. Yeah. Yep. We're good.
Good to go.
All right. Moving on. Yeah,
we got Orioles at Rangers. Kyle Bradish on the mound for the Orioles. John Gray for the Rangers. How much interest? We'll start with the pitchers again, as always. Kyle Bradish, John Gray. Any interest there?
Yeah, middling interest in both. I'd be interested more in Gray if he was a little bit cheaper. 9,200 DK is all right. It's not great. He's 10.8% owned. At that price, you could push over that ownership. It's like right about right in my mind. So I don't love the Gray play, but I do think he's the better of these two pitchers by a pretty wide margin. 25.7% strikeout rate over 127 and a third last year, a 3.46 xFIP, 3.96 ERA, and 11.6% swinging strike rate. Nice CSW, mid-range in the home runs, good contact profile. So I like John Gray as a pitcher. Is a guy we were waiting for years for him to get out of Colorado. Finally did, and put up pretty decent numbers above replacement level numbers. I just don't love him at the 9,700 on FanDuel. That said, he's only 6% owned, going up against an Orioles lineup that I really like this season. That's one that's going to really be dictated by my process. That's one I probably won't make an individual decision on. He'll just go into the model, and however he comes out the other side is probably what I'll get to on John Gray. I do like him, but I don't love the spot and I don't love the price. But the ownership is nice. The talent is there. So we can play some John Gray. Kyle Bradish on the other side, 21.8% strikeout rate, 9% walk. League average type of a pitcher, replacement level kind of a guy. 25.9% CSW is low, 117 and 2/3. We saw him put up a couple decent starts last year. I don't know that he necessarily gets lit by this Rangers team, and there are a decent number of strikeouts. There's a couple aggressive strikeout guys in there, but a couple of their very best hitters at the top of the lineup are very good at avoiding the strikeout. So if those guys are making contact, driving the ball, and I'm thinking of Marcus Semien, Corey Seager here, it gets a little dicey really fast for him. So I don't love the Kyle Bradish play. Probably wouldn't go there. 6,900 if you want to take a few value shots on DK, perfectly serviceable. Just don't expect it to win very often, right? But you don't need it to win very often to be profitable with that play. So you can do it on DK. 8,300, I have no interest on FanDuel.
Okay. And then moving right on to the bats on the other side, Orioles, Rangers. Tell me about your interest in stacking these teams up or playing some one-offs from them.
Yeah, it looks like the O's are going fairly low owned, probably because people are considering John Gray. So we'll see how the numbers come through later in the day. On DK, everybody below 10%, with Cedric Mullins pushing up toward 10%. FanDuel, Mullins is the highest owned at 5%. Everybody else is in the low single digits. So if you've been itching to play this Orioles stack at the start of the season here, this might be a really good spot to do it. They're going up against a guy who I do think is a good pitcher, serviceable pitcher, but this is a loaded lineup. Cedric Mullins, Adley Rutschman, Anthony Santander, Ryan Mountcastle. I talked about Mountcastle yesterday, and it bears repeating. In I think it was 5 different of the advanced hitting categories that are really, really important contact metrics, power metrics, things that you really care about. Ryan Mountcastle was top 15% last year, and only 6 hitters were top 15%. The other guys in that group with him were names like Bryce Harper, Shohei Ohtani, Jordan Alvarez. So he is that caliber of a guy. It will come through. I expect a huge year from Ryan Mountcastle. So really like his bat. Gunnar Henderson, their multi-position eligible infielder, certainly very playable at only 6.7% on DK, 2.4% owned on FanDuel. Jorge Mateo, he cut his hand on Saturday, was out of the lineup yesterday. I expect him back. Hand laceration, I wouldn't really think is going to keep him out of there. They want him in there for his legs. They don't really care if he can use his hands outside of maybe fielding the ball at shortstop, but I expect him back. So him as a wraparound from the bottom of the lineup, maybe a little Austin Hayes in the middle there. Urias and Adam Frazier, take him or leave him.
Okay. Yeah. Fun lineup there for the Orioles.
Yeah. Like that lineup a lot. They're going to get good awful fast. Need some pitching.
And did you go over the Rangers bats?
A little bit just in terms of talking about them against Bradish. So I mentioned
Right.
Semien and Seager, the best power combination in the middle infield in all of baseball, probably 26-33 in terms of home runs from those two last year. But I do also really like Nate Lau or Lowe. I hate that name. It's Nathaniel in some places. It's Lau. It's Low. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
Nate Lowe, Adolis Garcia. I don't really like Josh Young. He's just way too many strikeouts right now. I don't care about strikeouts from guys who do make contact from time to time, do hit the ball from time to time. He hasn't really done that for us yet. So I need to see more out of Josh Young. Bottom of the lineup leaves something to be desired outside of Brad Miller, who I do like. 2,400, 2,500 site to site. First base on DK, third base outfield on FanDuel. No ownership whatsoever to speak of. Decent, sneaky little power bat if he's in the lineup down the bottom of the lineup there.
Okay, perfect. I think we've covered this game well enough. We have 5 more games to get through, and theoretically only 10 minutes. I'm imagining we're not going to. I think we're going to go over a little bit, but we'll try not to go over too far. First, let me tell you guys about this great
9 minutes now. I can knock it out as just one straight monologue if you don't want to do any.
You just want to monologue. Well, I got to do this read first, then you can monologue if you want to.
No,
we'll keep the format, but we'll go. We'll try to go quick. Bet365. This deal is only available in New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, or Virginia. But if you live in one of those states, you want to listen up. New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, or Virginia, bet $1 and you'll get $200 in bonus bets at Bet365. You need to make a deposit, but it's just literally $1 and you will get $200 in bonus bets. They'll show up in your bonus bets balance. And then once you bet through them, that's real money. You're turning $1 into, depending on how well you do, infinite amount of money, or possibly you could lose $1 over time, but not a huge risk here, but very, very small risk for potentially huge reward. So definitely check out that offer from Bet365. Link is in the description of this video. Again, you're turning $1 into $200 in bonus bets immediately. This deal, I think, is going away within the next couple days. It already dropped down from, you were at one point getting $365 for $1. Now it's down to $200. And I think I've heard rumblings that that this deal is not going to be available much longer. So again, if you live in New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, Virginia, make sure you check out that deal from Bet365. Link is in the description. Reminder, the legal age for gambling in most states is 21 plus. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, Terry, now we've got 5 more games to go. We will continue with our regular format, but we'll try to go fast, particularly in the games that you don't have much interest. We'll go faster on those.
Yep.
So starting with the Tigers at Astros, Matt Boyd versus Hunter Brown. Any interest in either of these pitchers?
Yes, on the plus side, we only really have to talk about one of these teams on both sides of this game, and it's the Astros. Hunter Brown, big time rookie for the Astros, 20 and a third last year in a little cup of coffee, struck out 27.5% of hitters that he faced at the major league level in that little sample. Dominant numbers for strikeouts and just general upside in the PCL, which is a very, very difficult league to pitch in. It's a minor league that is at elevation with teams in Colorado and Albuquerque and all over the Pacific coast. So difficult league, very Coors-ish kind of a league to pitch in, and he just dominated at that level. So I expect big things from Hunter Brown. Field is very, very much on the play over on DK. He's 7,400 on the DK slate. That is a massive misprice for a kid with this talent upside going up against the Detroit Tigers, who have already yielded a couple massive fantasy scores to pitchers this year. So I expect huge, huge things from Hunter Brown. He is in his debut in my model here, because I don't think I projected him last year. He's projecting as my 6th highest raw starter, behind Rasmussen, John Gray, Jose Barrios, some other guys here, but I don't know that I agree with it necessarily. I think I might want to look at what my innings projection is on him, because I think that should be a little bit higher than where I have him. I really like the spot for him. 21.3% owned on FanDuel for 9,100, probably about right. I'll probably be around the field there, maybe a little higher just based on the matchup. Just love the spot for the kid. No interest whatsoever in Matthew Boyd, the lefty. Think he's very, very targetable for bats here. So I would be looking to, he's a contact oriented lefty going up against this Astros lineup. Stack Astros all day. They're drawing ownership, but I don't really care that much. You compare them with a lot of low-owned teams, that we like some Astros Orioles stacks maybe is jumping out to me. Positionally, those fit together well in my head too, where you want those bats, a lot of outfielders on the Astros here. So I think there's some really interesting ways to play this team that might go under the radar. Top to bottom, basically, with these guys. Everybody knows the star, so let me focus on a guy that I mentioned on shows quite a bit, Mr. Chas McCormick. Hopefully he's going to be in the lineup again. He's drawing 6.8% ownership in our projection, 5.5 on FanDuel. He's 2,600 still on FanDuel, 3,000 on DK. Just a tremendous contact profile from Chas McCormick. I can't say enough good things about him because he never gets attention and he's always cheap. So get some Chas McCormick in your lives if you're stacking Astros. Corey Julks, if he's in the lineup. David Hensley is fine, serviceable, at least in the infield for a very, very cheap price to offset some price and some ownership in Astros stacks here if you're going full stack. So a lot of different ways to put this team together. The obvious names, Pena, Bregman, Alvarez, Abreu, and Tucker off the top. Stack those guys in any combination you possibly can.
Any concern about Hunter Brown not being fully stretched out? Burt Bondy says he had a minor back issue in spring. He was wondering how stretched out Hunter Brown is.
Yeah, that was one reason that, like I said, I wanted to take a look at where his innings were coming through. And right now I had him at, I actually put a placeholder in for under 5 innings, which was why he was projected for that. I forgot that I did that this morning with him and with a couple of these rookie pitchers. I did notice the back thing. So maybe a little bit of concern. I still think there's probably upside, especially at the DK price. If he, even in 4 innings against this Tigers team, he's probably going to find you some upside for strikeouts and for some clean innings. You'd like him to go the full 5 and be on the board for the win and all of that. So yeah, it's a little bit of a lingering concern, but we're playing the guessing game there, and it's just such a good spot. What I would hope is that I can get there, and then that maybe drives the field away from him if people start talking about that around the industry. So see what happens with the ownership. If he gets to the point where the ownership gets, insane into like the 50% range, if it goes the other way, then maybe you start peeling back some plays. But right now in that 30% range for that price on DK, I think it's perfectly fine. I'd be a little bit more concerned maybe on FanDuel because we're probably not going to book the quality start. We've got a regular price for him over there, and we're still pulling some ownership. So maybe, good question, maybe a little bit more of an impact for FanDuel play. That's a really good point. I had forgotten to bring that up. So thank you to whoever said that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thank you, Bert. All right, Guardians at Athletics. We have Zach Plesac on the mound going up against James Caprillion. How much interest do you have in Plesac or Caprillion?
Yeah, Plesac is another guy who was up toward the top of my board, and I didn't name him because I wanted to think about it a second, but he's going up against the A's here, so it makes some sense. And it's not like like I said, it's a 4th and 5th starter type of day. So even though he's at the top of the board, we're not talking about a massive projection or a huge difference between him and a guy like, 15 on this list. So it's a pretty tight, mediocre pitching slate. But I think Plesac's serviceable enough that he could get through this A's lineup. He's not a good strikeout pitcher, 17.6% strikeout rate. He had a 4.4 xFIP, a 3.35% home run rate. So he's decent at limiting power, inducing. No, the contact profile is not great. Maybe I'm going to peel that back a little bit. Maybe we get away from Plesac a little bit more because now I'm seeing the ownership marks too. 24.5% on, 20.8 on DK. Considering the ownership, I think I'm gonna retract that a little bit. I'm less interested in Plesac at that popularity. The price is fine. At 7,400 on FanDuel, at 7,900 on DK, he is playable even with those strikeout numbers in this matchup against the A's. The A's are just a bad baseball team, and there are a ton of strikeouts available in that lineup, even for a guy like Plesac. I just don't love those ownership marks. I wasn't expecting that. So trepidatious interest. I would be below the field, but I'll have some.
Okay. Fair. And any Caprillion for you?
No, I don't think so. I think way too much of this Guardians lineup. They're way too difficult to strike out. He doesn't strike anybody out. 134 innings, 17% strikeout rate. So, similar to what Plesac said, but Plesac's got the much better lineup. Caprillion also walked 10.1 last year, 5.06 xFIP. A lot to dislike about Caprillion. And like I said, I just love that Guardians lineup. So,
well, then let's talk about that Guardians lineup. How about you ready to talk about the Guardians and or Athletics? How much interest you have?
Lots of interest on the Guardian side, no real interest on the A's side. If you want to take one-offs from the A's, maybe some Seth Brown. Outside of him, nobody I really like. So that was a quick, easy one there. But Guardians basically top to bottom, especially in this matchup. They're getting single-digit ownership. They're a little bit expensive, particularly around Jose Ramirez, who deserves it. They're getting a little bit more ownership because they're a little cheaper on FanDuel, but still very, very playable. Very low strikeout rates from the top: 9.4%, 16.6, 12%, 15.8, 16.1, 19.6. That's the first 6 hitters in this lineup were better than average at avoiding strikeouts. Some of them much, much better than average last year. They put the ball into play. They've got power. They've got speed. Multiple 20 home run guys. Multiple double-digit stolen base guys. Looking at the stolen bases from from last year, and we're going to see a big uptick in these numbers this year. 19, 18, 20, 20, and 21 going from top to bottom in this lineup. So there are a lot of speed opportunities. They've got Mike Zunino in this lineup now, who we know just can obliterate pitchers from time to time for 2 home runs, and he's going to strike out 5 times in the game the other times. But that is a good DFS play, especially when you get him at 3,400 as a catcher, where you need to play catchers on DK. 2,100 on FanDuel, he's playable at that price on FanDuel. You don't need him, but you could sneak him into a few lineups there. I don't love Miles Straw for DFS, but he's going to steal a massive amount of bases this year, so he might even be sneaky playable this year. He just needs to get on base more. But at least 1 through 7, Juan Rosario Ramirez, Josh Bell, Josh Naylor, Oscar Gonzalez, and Andres Jimenez, absolutely just mash those stacks against this pitcher.
Okay, love that. So we're playing some Guardians today. And any interest in the Athletics?
No, I threw Seth Brown out there as a one-off.
Okay,
that would be
right.
like the only guy. 13% barrels, 40.8% hard hit, 25 home runs, 11 steals for Seth Brown. Underrated little player, but he's got nothing around him.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, we've got Angels at Mariners, Reed Detmers versus George Kirby. How much interest, if any, in Reed Detmers or George Kirby?
Kirby's going to be a tricky one. 8,000 on the DK slate, pulling nearly 30% ownership against a pretty good Angels lineup here. He's 10,000 on FanDuel, 6.8% owned. If you want to pay up to be contrarian to get him, I don't really mind that. I like the pitcher. 24.5% strikeout rate, only a 4.1% walk rate last year, 3.33 xFIP, a 3.39 ERA. So again, another guy who was just what he was on the surface. The whip can come down a little bit. I think it will, given his walk rate. I think his whip will improve this year. Doesn't really give up a lot of power. So I like Kirby. I just am a little hesitant given the talent in the Angels lineup. Taylor Ward, Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, Anthony Rendon. It's a tough lineup. Hunter Renfroe in there as well. Gets a little thinner back toward the back end. There are strikeouts, even with those superstars. You're talking about high strikeout rate guys. So I think Kirby could have a nice start. It's just tricky with that ownership because of that $8,000 price on DK. I think I like him better as a pay up option on FanDuel. Reed Detmers on the other side, kind of similar. I think less of him in terms of the pitching talent. 129 innings, 22.6% strikeout rate, double the walk rate that Kirby had, 8.5 walk rate last year. Worst xFIP by basically a run. Gives up a little. No, the power was fine. 14.7% at 8,200. I like a cheaper Kirby despite it's not even a worse matchup because the Mariners are really good. I like a cheaper Kirby even at more ownership there. Don't love Detmers. He's playable though, right? He's not for me, but I think you can play him. 9,600 on FanDuel, only 3.9% owned. If he's your guy, if you really like Reed Detmers, he projects fine for me. I'll have some. I might be a little bit over that 4% mark. If I'm like 8-10% Reed Detmers here, I don't hate it. It wouldn't be my like go-to guy though if I was hand building a lineup or something like that.
Okay, so he'll make it in your player pool, but not somebody that you're trying to jam, and you might even be over the field. Okay.
Yeah, he projects. I mean, it's a tough matchup against Seattle here, but he does project 5th overall. So he's a spot ahead of Hunter Brown against that Detroit. That was what triggered in my mind when I said, I want to check Hunter Brown's innings there. Because I said, should he really be below Reed Detmers going up against Seattle? Probably not. But it's a very thin margin there. So I do have Detmers projected well. I just don't really believe in the massive upside here. I think he's a league average type of a guy.
Burt Bondy says Detmer's velo and spin rate up this spring, which I know we talk about like spring numbers a lot of the time. It doesn't matter, but those sound like numbers that do matter. Like that does impact things. It doesn't, like, you're maybe not playing against the best lineups necessarily in spring, but I mean, if your velo and spin rate are up, those are
those are definitely interesting indicators. That's something that I want to watch as we get into games that count though, right? Because a lot of those spring starts, you're talking about limited innings. You're talking about
True.
I would almost chalk it up to like a relief appearance, right? Where a guy can put a little bit more maximum effort in because he's just taking a couple innings. He knows he doesn't need to go 5-6 innings, right? So let's see how the ball's coming out of his hand today. But that is definitely something to watch. And he does have that kind of a profile where if he can improve some stuff like that, this stuff might really catch up, and we might see a pitcher take a couple strides this year. I'm not saying he's bad. Like I said, I think right now league average with some room for improvement. So we'll see. But good call out, good question there. Let's keep an eye on that as the games begin to count.
Okay, and then on the other side of it, does it affect your impact? Your interest in the Mariners? Tell me about your level of interest in either of these stacks or one-offs from this game.
I like them both. I like both lineups. The Angels are going basically unowned. Trout and Ohtani are both over 6,000 on DK, so good luck fitting that in. But maybe if you're going to our combination of like Rasmussen and Hunter Brown for cheap at the pitcher, maybe you can get there. You probably need to go to like a Kyle Bradish for 6,900 or like an Oviedo or something like that. It gets a little ugly around some of those pitching plays. Maybe Michael Grove can get you there against Colorado. He doesn't project out well, but he's only 56. So maybe that can help you get to the combination of the superstars from the Angels in your lineup with some quality around them. But yeah, Taylor Ward, I like a lot. He's 4,700, 3,400 site to site, under 1% owned. Anthony Rendon still hits the ball fairly hard from time to time. Definitely has some issues, but if he's in the lineup, I think you can play him. Hunter Renfroe, I like a lot with his power and his contact profile. Jake Lamb, left side of the plate, if he's in the lineup, is somewhat interesting. Bottom of the lineup kind of falls off around Renifo and Gio Urshela, but Logan O'Hoppe is an interesting catcher. 3,100, no real ownership to speak of where catchers are required.
Okay. What about from the Mariners? Any interest?
Yeah, definitely interest here. They're drawing a little bit more attention, but not a lot. Cal Raleigh's pulling 8.6% ownership because he's only 2,500 on the DK slate. 27 home runs as a catcher last year in 415 plate appearances, 15.4% barrel rate. You can sign up for some shares of that. He should probably be over 10% owned as where you need catchers at that price. Jose Rodriguez is 4,000 on the DK. Oh no, that's pulling the wrong guy. There's apparently a pitcher named Jose Rodriguez on this slate, so watch out for that if you're playing Mariners. Make sure you're getting the right Jose Rodriguez. That's going to cause all kinds of issues. Got to fix that. But I'll play him whatever his price is in this matchup. He's a superstar. Love some Jose Rodriguez. Ty France, decent hit tool. Eugenio Suarez, ton of power. Teoscar Hernandez,
Rodriguez. That's a naming. Julio Rodriguez.
Oh, that's why. Yeah, that's weird.
Wait. Yeah.
Why did this come? Does Labs have it that way?
I don't know.
Hang on, I got to check that. Yeah, I can't believe I was saying Jose.
Yeah,
I was thinking
it sounded wrong, but then
it's in here. That's weird because I pull my lineups from Spanish Schmabs and it came through as Jose.
Interesting.
That's really weird. It's Julio up there now, but yeah.
Okay.
Let me just fix that real quick.
All right.
Thank you for whoever pointed out that I was saying Jose Rodriguez, not Julio. There he is. All right, 5,600 on DK, 10% owned, 44,000 on FanDuel, 12% owned. That's perfectly fine. You can play him. Rest of the guys that I was talking about, happy to play. Colton Wong, maybe a little bit interesting. 4,300, 2,700, no ownership to speak of. 15 homers, 17 steals last year.
Okay.
And Jared Kelenic. Got to throw Jared Kelenic into the mix. Monster spring out of that kid. Still believe. Even with all his terrible struggles the last 2 years, the contact profile still a 13.6% barrel rate last year, despite going 141, 221, 313. Hit 7 home runs in 181 plate appearances. Like I said, monster spring. This was a kid with a fantastic prospect pedigree coming up. Might have just needed a little more seasoning. We've seen that before. So let's see what we got from Kelenic. But at 2,800, no ownership, 2,700, no ownership, I'll take him.
Okay, love that. Anything else from this game?
No.
All right, 2 more games to cover. We'll start with D-backs at Padres. Ryan Nelson for the D-backs, Ryan Weathers for the Pods. Any interest in Ryan or Ryan?
Yeah, multi-Ryan slate. I think we've got 2 Ryans and a Ryan or something like that. But Ryan Nelson, 7,700 and only 0.5% owned on the DK slate. Maybe a little bit interesting as an option there. I just don't know how much depth we're going to get from him. Young starter, only threw 18 and a third last year, 23.2% strikeout rate, 8.7% walks, 4.69 xFIP in the small sample. His xFIP was ridiculously higher than his ERA. It's a tiny sample. He only gave up a 1.47 ERA with a 4.69 xFIP. So that tells you the difference between what happened on the field versus what he was really throwing up there. I expect him to come in more around that above 4 xFIP expected number this year. So no ownership. You can take some shots. He's got a decent prospect profile. He's not a super high-end strikeout guy. And it's a deadly Padres lineup that has some guys that are very difficult to strike out. So I don't love the spot, but if nobody's going there, a couple lotto tickets in a big field tournament, not necessarily a mistake. I don't know that you need to go there on the one pitcher side though.
Okay.
And it's probably too expensive, right? You should probably be more that Oviedo price, like that 6,800 rather than 7,700. It's probably too high a price.
Okay. So you're probably not going there, but you can see possibly.
I could justify it. Like I could make an argument for it, but I probably wouldn't go there myself is what I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying that somebody's making a mistake if they do it, but it's probably not the best play in the world.
Okay. Makes sense. Let's jump to the bets. We've got two higher scoring teams. D-backs at a 4.1 run implied total. Padres 4.7. How much interest do you have in either of these teams as stacks and or one-offs?
Yeah, pods are difficult to get to. Three guys in the upper fives here in Machado, Soto, and Bogarts. All three of them certainly worth it. And going up against a rookie hurler here, I think you can definitely get there with the pods. It's keeping their ownership down. So stack those guys. Throw some Trent Grisham into the mix, some Jake Cronenworth into the mix. Ha-Sung Kim down toward the bottom of the lineup, another second baseman, no ownership, very cheap price, 11 homers, 12 stolen bases last year. Really turned his career around. He was kind of put up a clunker first year after coming over from the KBO and rescued his young career in the majors here last year with that performance. So he's a regular this season. He's going to be cheap and under-owned all season long. You can correlate him, wrap him around to the stars at the top of the lineup. On the D-back side of things, definitely like this lineup. I think they're an interesting team this year. I think they'll be a little bit sneaky for us, at least in the early going here. Kyle Lewis up at the top of the lineup is drawing, in the projected anyway, is drawing a lot of popularity because he's only 2,300, 2,400 on the FanDuel slate, 8.2% owned on FanDuel, 12 plus on DK. I think you can still get there. Ton of talent in that kid. He's just suffered multiple devastating knee injuries, but he was like the most highly regarded prospect in all of baseball on the offensive side of things just a few years ago. And we saw him produce at the major league level when he's been healthy. On the Diamondbacks now, getting an opportunity while he's able to walk, particularly against lefties, I think is a really good spot. We saw him hit a home run off a lefty the other day, so I think we can go there even with the popularity. Ketel Marte, Lourdes Gurriel, Christian Walker, even some old man Evan Longoria in the lineup if he's there. 3,500, 2,400 site to site, no ownership is fine. Corbin Carroll, Jake McCarthy, decent power and speed out of both of those guys, particularly McCarthy if he's batting ninth. 23 steals in 354 plate appearances with 8 home runs last year. Nice and interesting as a wraparound play from the bottom of that lineup there. And Corbin Carroll is a very highly regarded rookie who is 2,900, 115 plate appearances last year, 4 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 263, 30, 500 created runs, 30% better than average in that cup of coffee. So definitely like some Corbin Carroll as well. Outside of Nick Ahmed and Gabe Moreno, who are both serviceable to offset and to work into a few stacks, I am enthusiastic about the other 7 hitters in that lineup.
Okay, so you love 7 of the hitters from the pods. 2 that you're less inclined to talk about.
Yeah, the other 2 guys are just like moving parts that are they're, if you get them in a couple lineups that string together from 7, 9, 1, 2 or something like that, it's fine. It's not the ideal way to play it, but that's what we want to be doing with baseball, right? We want to build in that variance. We want to differentiate our lineups, play the stack. If you're playing 3 quarters, if you're playing a 4-man stack and 3 of the guys are the stars that everybody else has, and one of them is Nick Ahmed, who nobody's going to be playing for 2,200, you're getting value, you're getting upside. Hey, he doubles, he steals a bag, and you're talking a decent score for that price. So it can get you there. So you do want to be differentiating lineups that way.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else from this game before we move on to the final game of the slate?
Final game. Let's go around again. Let's play 2.
Yeah. Well, we could do the early slate. You can touch on the early slate if you really want to.
I'm happy to.
All right, we'll go Rockies at Dodgers. Rockies have a 3.5 run implied total. Dodgers at 5.3. But we'll start with the pitchers. Ryan Feltner versus. Now this one is actually Michael Grove.
This is
I had him in there for the.
Yep.
Yeah, this is a spot for Michael Grove. Tell me about your level of interest in either. Are you going to be playing either of these pitchers at all?
I think Grove definitely deserves some attention on the DK slate. He's 5,600 over there going up against the Rockies on the road. He is right-handed. This was going to be Ryan Pepio's start, I think, before Pepio got hurt. He was filling in for Gonsolin, I think. So this is a secondary or tertiary substitute pitcher up from the minors, but he's a kid that they like. They have a decent hopes for. In 29 1/3 innings in a cup of coffee last year, 18% strikeout rate, over 6 starts, 7.5% walks, 4.77 xFIP. Probably still needs some seasoning, but he's going to get 3 starts here at the start of the season. At least that's what they're expecting him to see here. So we'll see, but it's just such a good matchup at such a cheap price. And the field hasn't gotten crazy for him yet. He's only 16.2% owned at that price. So if you're talking about value and if you're looking to build, like go into the Angels, if you're looking to build those 2 $6,000 hitters in your lineup, you're probably going to need a guy like this in a spot like this. So I don't expect a huge score, but I probably expect a score that's good enough for 5,600 there. 6,900 on the one pitcher site. 4.1% of the field is probably making a mistake going to him. I don't think we're getting a quality start and 35 FanDuel points at him. I think we're getting maybe 20 FanDuel points at him, something like that. 6,900, probably too expensive for that kind of output for him. We're going to just have too many guys at fair to similar pricing that are probably going to exceed that. I don't love it there.
Okay. What about the other side of the game? The bats. Rockies again have a 3.5 run implied total. Dodgers at 5.3. I would expect the Dodgers are going to be kind of interesting with 5.3 runs, but I haven't looked at the ownership yet. Tell me about your level of interest in stacking either of these teams or some one-offs.
Yeah, the Dodgers, you can go to them anytime. It's an all-star team, basically top to bottom. There's some new names down toward the bottom like James Outman, Miguel Vargas, Miguel Rojas that have been interesting to start the season. They're all still cheap, but they're getting a little bit of attention because they've been interesting. Outman in particular, and Vargas actually in particular is getting a lot of attention today too. The stars throughout the lineup from the top down, you can absolutely stack, but they're getting a ton of attention. They're very expensive. They're very popular. They're going up against Ryan Feltner, who I didn't talk about because he's a target for bats. He's not a pitcher that we want to be playing. So you can fling bats at this kid. You just got to focus on what else you're stacking them with, right? Make sure that you're differentiating those lineups. Use them with a different pitcher. Use them with a less popular second stack or some one-offs, however you want to build. Just make sure you're differentiating. But yeah, lot to like about the Dodgers here. The Rockies on the other side, I guess they're somewhat interesting because they're all under 1% owned outside of Ezekiel Tovar, who's 1.2% because he's 2,300 on DK. Going up against Michael Grove here, like I said, at the major league level, he didn't put up much of a strikeout rate last year. He gave up some contacts, gave up some power, 4.51% home run rate in that small sample. So you can see the Rockies get away with something here and no ownership. I think it kind of makes sense to take out at least some hedge stacks against that 16.2% of the field on DK because they're cheap. They're easy to get to and nobody's going there. That said, CJ Cron, 5,200, Chris Bryant, 5,000. Those are maybe a little bit aggressive, but if you're building out a stack, the rest of the guys, they're cheap. So they kind of offset that, like Ryan McMahon for 42, Charlie Blackmon, 44, Jerkson Profar, 42. If you wanted to go to Luis Montero at 27, those prices help offset the high prices for those other guys. So I think you can build some sneaky contrarian Rocky stacks here against a rookie who doesn't have a tremendous strikeout rate. You might get away with it. It's a tournament play. It's not one I'm going to get carried away with, but at no ownership, you can sneak some of those shares in there. So I'll play both sides of this in the bats.
Okay. Anything else about this final game or the slate in general? Any final thoughts?
No, is it lock yet? Are we started?
Not for another 7 hours or something.
Fortunately. No, I think we covered this one pretty much top to bottom. So looks like you do have all 4 confirmed lineups for your 210 start. So I can take a quick look.
Yeah,
looks
do you
like
want to comment on that at all? Maybe just a couple minutes overview.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. I don't have any stats loaded up, but just looking at the guys, like I mentioned, all 4 pitchers are serviceable, at least in that mid-range. We've seen extreme upside from Freddie Peralta in spots. We've seen decent strikeout performances from Michael Kopech, from Carlos Carrasco has given us a lot of quality. Carrasco has also been one of those pitchers where you hate to trust him because every time you start to trust him, he completely lets you down. But just a guy you want to believe in too, just because of all the struggles he's come back from, beating cancer and all of that. So I like Carrasco here. I like Peralta. Disclafani would probably be my lower end out of the 4 starting pitchers. The other 3 I would have on probably about an equal tier above that. None of them are in a good matchup. 4 good hitting teams: Giants, White Sox, Brewers, and Mets. If you're looking at the lineups, fairly standard lineups. I like the premium stack at the top of the Brewers lineup with Yelich, Winker, Adames, Tellez. You can work some Garrett Mitchell into that. Don't love the rest of the pieces there. William Contreras is fine as a catcher. On the Mets, you can basically stack the Mets at least 1 through 7 on most slates. They've got Luis Guillorme in the lineup today in the 9 hole. He's an interesting hit tool specialist, interesting stick. Second, third, and shortstop eligible for the dead minimum on the FanDuel slate today. Looking at the DK, second and shortstop eligible for 2.1K over on DK. He's kind of an interesting play. If you want to play him as a wraparound, bring him up into Nimmo, Marte, Lindor, Alonso. Like I would probably go to Luis Guillorme for 2.1 there instead of Jeff McNeil, who's hitting 5th behind those guys for 4,000. Give me the guy who's going to be in front scoring the runs for those guys because they're both like hit tool kind of guys. They're not real home run hitters. They're not guys who are going to drive anything in. So give me some cheap Guillorme and wrap them around to Nimmo, Marte, Lindor, and Alonso as my 5-man on DK. I like that a lot. On the other teams,
jump in now into
your
lineups. I said you're going to jump in and enter some lineups now. Now that you're looking at it, you're like, "Ooh,
I might have to. I might have to jump into the old DK streets at least at a couple points this year and during it. But if it wasn't a 2-gamer, I might be more interested just because I don't really like 2-gamers that much.
I kind of do. So, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
just because of the variance.
Yeah, just because it's a little bit more. You get a little bit more unique. You get a little more game theory, I think.
Yeah. And it's definitely a spot where, getting creative with these lineups pays, like what we were talking about earlier, play hitters against your pitchers, mix and match. You can stack a lot less in a 2-game format too. I think you can get away with a lot more one-offs because it's just such a smaller pool that, even if you hit on a guy who just, hits 2 doubles and drives in 3 runs or something like that, I mean, that's a nice score, but it's not like a double home run game, right? It's a very different animal dealing with a limited pool. Just to fire through it real quick, some of those lefties in that Giants lineup who let me down in Yankee Stadium against my own pitcher. So it was a good thing as a Yankee fan. It was a bad thing DFS-wise that they didn't hit left-handed home runs in Yankee Stadium yesterday. But I do like some of those lefties in Chicago here going up against Kopech. Looks like we do have wind blowing in, though, so it might limit the power upside there. I like a lot of the White Sox. This is a lineup that I just love. I'm going to be going to these guys all year. I succeeded with them decently last year. Timmy Anderson, Luis Robert Jr., Andrew Benintendi. Very difficult to strike out. A lot of hit tool, decent amount of power, decent amount of speed from that trio. Eloy Jimenez, monster power hitter in the cleanup spot behind those 3 guys. You can stack all 4 of them. You can also build in Joan Moncada, Andrew Vaughn, Jasmani Grandal, Oscar Colas down in the 8-hole, the rookie, only 2,000 on DK, dead minimum price. Hasn't done much yet. It's coming. That kid is going to hit. So I'm not worried about Colas. Everybody knows my feelings about Elvis Andrus, but you can certainly play him for DFS purposes. Top to bottom on the White Sox today. Definitely can stack them against Anthony DeSclafani or take some one-offs. Like an Andrew Vaughn one-off is somewhat interesting. Even with the same-handed pitching matchup, there's just enough power in that kid's bat that, maybe people don't play him as much because he's going up against a righty today. I think you get to some Andrew Vaughn there. John Moncada, very interesting. So like the White Sox quite a bit.
And then I just want to, so Marquee Music Group would ask, can we stack players from 2 teams in the same game? The answer is yes, but what is the actual rule? Is that you need to have players from at least 2 games? Is that you can only play up to 5 batters,
you would need at least 1 player from that other game, yeah.
Okay, and that's it.
Yeah, you can't have all your players be from just one of the 2 games.
Got it. Okay, Terry, anything else that you want to say before we head out here?
No, I'll be hanging around in the Stochastic Discord as usual. So any questions, hit me up over there. Like I said, there's stuff out there in the world on, if you find my Twitter handle, which I think is on the screen there for whoever asked in chat, at DigitalB21. And that's all I'll say about that. But I'm here. I'm around. Hit me up. Love talking baseball. I'll be doing it all day, gang.
I love talking baseball with you. Always fun. Thanks again for coming on, Terry.
Anytime.
Thank you all for watching. And of course, make sure you stick around. We have plenty of great shows coming up starting in 1:30 Eastern. Greg and I will be doing a So Rare NBA show. Of course, there's no NBA tonight, so the slate actually starts tomorrow, but Greg and I will be doing a live show at 1:30 Eastern talking So Rare NBA. Then you can head on over to the Odd Shopper channel. We have the Odd Shop at 4 o'clock Eastern with Eitan and Eric. And then we'll come back. We have this will be the first slate of the year. And then there might be because there's no NBA, you're treated to an MLB deeper dive today with Josh Engelman and Adam Ship My Money Share, followed by Live Before Lock. I'll be back for Live Before Lock along with Greg. So we're giving it the full no NBA treatment tonight. So that'll be fun. So come make sure you're there for deeper dive and Live Before Lock if you want to talk some more baseball tonight.
I'll be tuning in.
All right, hell yeah. Well, thank you guys for watching and good luck.